Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Howdy beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Human. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good. As per usual, before we enter today's topic, I want to do a bit of housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So, 3 things I want you to do for me before we get into today's episode. Number 1. Follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod to be kept up to date on anything I'm doing, watching and reading and playing and all that jazz. Number 2. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. A subscribe is wonderful, but a like and a comment will take me miles. And finally, if you listen to this on Spotify on your mobile phone, don't forget to leave a star rating from 1 to 5 stars, so it will shoot me up the Spotify algorithm. So if you do all 3 of those things for me right at the beginning, I will be eternally grateful. So, today's topic is continuation of my Mass Effect deep dive with talking about Mass Effect 2. Oh, I absolutely love this game. But before I go on to talking about the game, one thing I want to do is to tell you all you wonderful beans, to check out my book review of Mass Effect Ascension, which is the second book in the Mass Effect novel collection. The book takes place before the events of Mass Effect 2. So if you're interested in what happens in the sort of period between Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2, if you're interested in that timeline, then check out that book review and check out the book. It's actually a pretty good book. I highly recommend it. So if you can do that, you can do that now. If you're not interested, by all means, stick around now. But I absolutely love Mass Effect 2. It is one of my favorite games of the trilogy. And to be honest, it's not just me. Majority of Mass Effect fans really, really love the second game. And mainly because it took everything that Mass Effect 1 was and amped it up, bolstered it, injected it with adrenaline and just let it run in a field. It just let loose. It looked better. It felt better. It played better. The combat was so much better. Yes, we no longer have unlimited ammo, but you know what? Clips was fine. I kind of liked having a clip, especially if you play in hard difficulty. It kind of puts the stakes up a little bit and you actually feel like, damn, I'm actually going against the collectors. The collectors are hard. They're tough. I want to stick to cover. I want to conserve ammo. I want to use my abilities a lot more. So these sort of things, I want to use my squad mates. So everything that Mass Effect 1 was that made Mass Effect 1 perfect was taken and improved tenfold in Mass Effect 2. And there's a reason as to why I like Star Wars Rogue One. And there is a point to this, right? And I'll come back to Mass Effect, trust me. It all comes around in a one big cycle. You see what I did there? It's all one big cycle to this. There's a reason that I love my favorite Star Wars movie is Star Wars Rogue One. Simply put, it's because it's got nothing to do with the Jedi. It's got nothing to do with the Sith or the Jedi, nothing. It is purely just the Empire versus the Rebels. It's incredible movie. I love it. It's one of my favorites. There is a reason as to why Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is my favorite movie. Because it's got nothing to do with Voldemort. Voldemort is there. The Sith and the Jedi, they are there. Right? But they're not the overarching story. They're not integral to the story. They're not important. The whole point of Rogue One is to get the plans to the Death Star. The whole point of Prisoner of Azkaban is to find out who killed Lily and James Potter. The reason I bring it up for this is the fact of the reason I like Mass Effect 2 is that the Reapers are there, but they're not there. After facing sort of the Geth and the overarching threat of the Reapers in 1 and then fighting Sovereign at the end of the first game. Then obviously you've got Mass Effect 2, which is just all out Reaper war. Mass Effect 2 is a good resting place but bumper, where it's like it's a good relaxation point of like you can enjoy it for a bit. Yes, you've got the suicide mission. Yes, you're going up against the collectors, but it's the collectors. It's not the Reapers. The Reapers have an effect because of Harbinger and Harbinger taking control and monitoring what the collectors do. And obviously the collectors are working for the Reapers. But I like Mass Effect 2 because the Reapers aren't there. You don't have to worry about them. They're not a big, well, they are a threat, but they're not sort of in your face. Voldemort is there, but he's not there. It's to do with Peter Pettigrew and Sirius Black. The Sith are there, but it's to do with the Empire and the Rebels. And there's a reason why I like those films, because they are their own stories. They're in that universe, a universe that I love and a universe that I enjoy, but I don't have to worry about what's happening next with the story. It's like a breather. It kind of gives you a moment to relax and to enjoy it. And you do with Mass Effect 2. You meet all new characters, you go to all new worlds, you get to go to new planets. Granted, you can't go on the planets like you did in Mass Effect 1. You can't go into the Mako. There's none of that. But each planet you go to that you can go to, there's linear scripted levels, and it's all to do with storytelling. And the side missions feel as impactful as the main missions. And everything about Mass Effect 2, like I said, just takes what was already there and improves upon it and makes it better tenfold. And that's why I love Mass Effect 2 so much, is because you just get more of what you already loved. Granted, yes, I would have liked to go around on the Mako, but let's be all honest, the Mako was a difficult beast to tame. Some of us hardcore fans managed to do it, but many times I died on Novaria because the bloody Mako wouldn't listen to what I was doing, and I would go off the cliff and die, or I'd get shot by Geth and get destroyed. Like, we all know how much of a pig it was to drive, but you know what? We loved it for what it was, but that was Mass Effect 1. This is Mass Effect 2. This is Unreal Engine. This is something new. So my love of Mass Effect 2 mostly comes down to the fact of it's more story, it's more characters, it takes the focus away from the Reapers and allows you to focus on a new enemy, on a new threat. Yes, the Reapers are there, but they're not the integral threat. You lead up to Reapers. The Reapers should be left to the final game. The Reapers should be left to the final battle, because they are a beast. They're a monster that should stay in the dark until the final. Kind of like with Thanos, like we saw Thanos, we saw bits of him, but we didn't see him until we needed to see him. And that's what made his appearance more impactful when he was there. It's the same with the Reapers. It's the fact if you bought Reapers in now, it's too early. You needed to leave them for the third game. So you bring in the collectors, you bring in a new race, and you bring in a new twist and a story that goes with them. And then you bring in new characters like Jack, like Morden, like Grunt. You bring in all these new characters, you bring in Ilium, you bring in all these new worlds you can't go to. You just expand the universe. That's my biggest sort of comment from Mass Effect 1, is the fact of you take what's there and you take this universe and you make it feel like a universe. You expand it. We spend all our time in the one sort of one part of the Milky Way galaxy. We're now going through the Traverse. We're now going to the lawless side of the galaxy, to the Outer Rim. We've got Geth patrols. We've got outlaws, bandits, the Blue Suns, the Eclipse Mercs, Bloodpack, Vorcha. We're going to new places. We've got the Shadow Broker and other things like that. Like, we're looking into the nitty gritty. Like, this universe is ever expanding. It's like it's being stretched, but it's not being stretched thin. It's just being stretched wider and wider. And there's no rip, there's no tear, there's no fault, there's no problem. Everything is just kind of getting stretched and expanded. And this is what you want from something like Mass Effect, when you have an epic space opera. You want it to grow more and more, organically over time. And Mass Effect 2 does. It grows so beautifully and so wonderfully, and like an onion, like a cake, or however analogy you want to use. There's so many layers to it. There's so many different parts to it that you could spend hours playing the game, reading the codexes, meeting characters, talking to every single person, upgrading yourself and your ship and your weapons. Yeah, like, I know I've gone on a bit much here, but my love Mass Effect 2 goes far and beyond what anybody probably would have thought Mass Effect 2 was going to be. And I think it's the same for every fan. Everybody has their favorites, but I think majority of the Mass Effect fandom loves Mass Effect 2 the most, just because it took everything that Mass Effect 1 was, everything that we loved and enjoyed about it, and improved upon it. And things that annoyed us and things that we didn't like, it kind of got rid of them or stripped them down or made them a lot more simpler, And for that, you can't help not just appreciate everything that just went into this game, and the reason why BioWare became as big as they did, because of the decisions they made here with Mass Effect. And it had another sort of shockwave in the other games. Like Dragon Age 2 was a very different game to Dragon Age 1 because of the sort of events that happened here in Mass Effect 1, not in terms of story, but in terms of development and how this game was developed, so it has a huge shockwave, and it does it in the gaming industry as well. Games change, RPGs change just because of what Mass Effect 2 did. Mass Effect 1 had a huge impact as well, but when Mass Effect 2 landed, it blew everything out the water. And even now, it's still considered probably one of the best Mass Effect games because it just blew everything out the water, and left a perfect opening for the Arrival DLC. And then the Arrival DLC itself left a huge gaping hole for the Reapers to come through, which they did. And then we go into Mass Effect 3, and then all hell breaks loose. But we'll get there when we get there. But like, it's what happens. You get me talking about Mass Effect, and I'll be here all day, every day, talking about it. But I want to talk about the development for a bit. I want to sort of reel it back in and talk about the development, right? So, the sort of game design for Mass Effect. So Mass Effect 2 was developed by BioWare and directed by Casey Hudson, who previously led the production of the first Mass Effect game. Before actual production began, BioWare created a list of goals to work towards based on feedback from fans, reviewers, and internal staff members. The company's main goal was to, and I quote, create an experience that was less about being a game and more about being an experience, end quote. In contrast to the exclusive focus on the main story of the original Mass Effect, Hudson explained that BioWare was interested in a plot where original stories had as much intensity as the main story, and decided that the idea of recruiting people and making them loyal to the player so that they could survive a suicide mission allowed the team to explore these possibilities. He noted, quote, "The funny thing is that people will say, other than gathering your crew and building your team and getting ready for this mission, there's not much story there. But that is the story. During the first stage of development, the designers prioritized streamlining and polishing the shooting aspects. RPG elements were not added until this process was completed. According to lead designer Christina Norman, quote, we wanted more satisfying combat, and a big part of that is making weapons more accurate and more powerful at level 1. Basically saying, let's take the RPG out of the shooter. Since BioWare had no experience with shooter games, the team spent roughly 3 months tuning how combat would work using the original Mass Effect as a basis. The camera was improved to offer a more precise aiming that included body-specific targeting like headshots. Norman explained that they wanted the weapons to have their own identity, noting that the game's final build has 19 weapons with 108 turning variables. The inclusion of limited ammunition was initially not part of the game design and was implemented for some early playtesting. However, the developers ultimately felt it improved the tension and pacing of the game. I completely agree. Yes, it does. As for the production, since the Mass Effect series was envisioned as a trilogy from its inception, work on Mass Effect 2 started shortly before the original Mass Effect was released. The game was initially developed exclusively for the Windows and Xbox 360 platforms, with support by Microsoft Game Studios, focusing to have the same level of dedication. As a result, each version features different user interfaces and controls. Like its predecessor, Mass Effect 2 was built using Epic Games' Unreal Engine 3 in conjunction with a framework that BioWare specifically developed for the Mass Effect games. As most of these Mass Effect technologies were already developed in the first game, the development team focused on adding new content and perfecting new features rather than creating them from scratch. Technical improvements included better memory management, larger textures, a higher frame rate, and better lighting scenarios. According to Hudson, quote, I actually can't think of an aspect of the game that we haven't overhauled and made 100% better, end quote. Mass Effect 2 contains voices from 90 voice actors who play 546 characters and speak over 25,000 lines of dialogue. Voice recording for the game took twice as long as the original Mass Effect. The Unreal Engine's 3 matinee tool, allowing developers to animate characters during cinematics, was integrated in BioWare's digital acting and conversation technology. As Hudson explained, quote, our writers write into a dialogue editor, and that becomes fused with the way that you end up seeing many different pieces of matinee play out in combination when you have a conversation with characters, end quote. Another Unreal 3 engine technology, Kismet, was used for scripting how levels or enemies would respond to a particular action. After using it on the first Mass Effect game, the game's programs were already familiar. Gamers programmers were already familiar with Unreal Engine 3, so they did not need to communicate with Epic Games for support consistency. Although Mass Effect 2 was primarily developed at BioWare Edmonton studio, a new team of 30 people was set to work at EA Montreal in March 2009 to supplement the teams already working on the game. The new team was composed of many people who worked on the original game, but most were new hires. Mass Effect 2 was developed over roughly 2 years, and more than 150 people worked on the game. Hudson mentioned two significant challenges that interfered with the development: financial problems due to the Great Recession limited the game's budget, and the team had to get through it without impacting their ambitious goals. Additionally, due to the 2009 flu epidemic, a significant part of the team was ill during the last months of development, resulting in losing a man year of time. Despite these factors, Hudson described the development of Mass Effect 2 as successful, quote, on time, on budget, and exceedingly high quality goals. End quote. Lead writer Mac Walters considered Mass Effect 2 a very quick project, stating that the team did not have much time to second guess themselves. Initially, BioWare denied that a PlayStation 3 version was in the works. Despite this, it was reported that the Microsoft Windows version of the game featured lines of code referencing the PlayStation 3. BioWare responded that the Unreal Engine 3 is cross-platform, which is why it includes PlayStation 3 code. Eventually, a PlayStation 3 version of Mass Effect 2 was released a year later than the Microsoft Windows and Xbox 360 versions. The Mass Effect 3 version uses a modified version of the Unreal Engine 3 called the Mass Effect 3 engine, the same engine BioWare used for the then upcoming Mass Effect 3. In this newer version, character models were slightly improved and controls were updated to support the PlayStation 3 controller. An option which allowed to switch back to the Xbox 360 controls layout was also added. So that is the sort of development, what went into the game design as well as the production. There's a lot more to go into. There's so much went into making this game, but I kind of condensed it because otherwise we'd be here all day. And again, people got time. They don't want to sit and listen to me talk about Mass Effect all day. Even though I'd happily do it, I can understand why people don't want me to do that. So before we get on to that review, so far, as I did with Mass Effect 1, I've already started playing the Mass Effect 2 to kind of get this out of the way as soon as possible. So I'm already halfway through the game. Currently, I have Jack, I have Grunt, I've got Tali. I'm trying to think who else. I've got Kasami, I've got Zaid. I'm trying to think who else I've got now. I'll get Garrus. I've got majority of the crew so far. I'm going off and doing loyalty missions. I've rescued New Horizon from Collector Attack. I think the last thing I was doing last time I played, I think I was going off and doing Jack's loyalty mission. I'll break down my process when I get into the actual review. I have a process of playing Mass Effect 2, as I did with Mass Effect 1. The review is going to be a little bit different. One thing I do want to mention is that in Mass Effect 1, when I played that and reviewed that, I reviewed it on a per planet basis. Because Mass Effect 2 is different in the way it tells stories, it's more of a character story than it is like a planet-to-planet story. I'm actually going to review it differently. So instead of planets, I'm going to review it in characters. And obviously, because the whole point of Mass Effect 2 is sort of recruiting new members and old members to the team and going on loyalty missions, and that's making them loyal so that the choices that you make benefit who lives and who dies in the suicide mission. That's how I'm going to review it. So I'm going to reviewing it per person, per mission. And then obviously I'll bring in like the crucial ones like New Horizons, the collector base, and X, Y, and Z. So the view is going to have a little bit of a different layout. It'll be, some things will be the same as when I did my Mass Effect 1 review. Some things will be a little bit different, but overall it will be tons and tons of Mass Effect 2 goodness. So I can't wait to get into it. I'm really, really excited. I've already been talking for 20 minutes and I haven't talked about the actual game itself. So it's about time I get off the mic, carry on playing the game, get it done, get it completed, and you lucky beans get to hear my thoughts and feelings right about now. Right, so here we are, finally getting around to talking about Mass Effect 2. I finished it today. I would have finished it yesterday, but I had the suicide mission to do, and it was late. It was midnight, and I was tired. I literally spent all of the day before just getting everything done, doing all the side missions, doing all the loyalty missions, buying all the upgrades that I need, going to planets, get the resources, that sort of thing. That's what I spent most of yesterday doing. So I finally finished it this morning. I've finished up the notes. I've had some dinner. It's cooled down a bit because the day is a swelter. I didn't want to do it this morning because it was red hot. So it's finally cooled down a bit. It's now recording time, perfect recording sort of temperature and weather. So here we are. Let's get straight into it, shall we? Because I've got a lot to talk about. So my first impressions of the game, going back to it and playing as a sort of female shepherd. We'll start off with like my first impressions going back into it. As I said in the introduction, this still stands as my favorite Mass Effect of all time. And I basically went into it in the introduction, but to kind of rehash it with a little bit more detail now that I've actually finished the game, is the fact of what I love about it. It's the structure. It's the idea that you've got the Milky Way galaxy, the Reapers are on the way, you've got colonies being taken by the Collectors. We don't know who the Collectors are or what they want at the moment in time when you begin the game. And as it unfolds, as you learn more about Cerberus, you learn more about the Collectors and the sort of what the Collectors are. And I'm going to say it now, spoilers. But for what the Collectors are, and then you find out that the Collectors used to be Protheans, and that the idea that after every single cycle, kind of like the Reapers did with the Keepers, that the Keepers were potentially a sentient race during one cycle, but were so useful to the Reapers that they kept them on as a docile race to keep the, I would imagine, keeping the mass relays as well as the Citadel running and helping newer races that would discover the mass relays and that would discover the Citadel, give them ease of use to how to integrate the technology with their own technology, but also know how to use whatever it is they find in the Citadel. And it's the same with the Collectors, as you sort of unravel the idea that the Protheans were that good of a foe that the Reapers decided to keep the Collectors on, and they mutated them and they changed them into what the Collectors are. And I remember that revelation came out when I first experienced it. I couldn't believe it, because at this point the Protheans were a myth. There was, apart from going to Ilos and going to some of the planets, we had no idea what a Prothean looked like. As I mentioned in my Mass Effect 1 review, when I was talking about Ilos, at that moment in terms of the development, BioWare didn't know exactly what Protheans looked like or what their sort of worlds would look like. So that's why their world looks completely different in Mass Effect 1, and then their technology is a little bit changed in terms of having pyramids and things like that in Mass Effect 2, these little sort of caches that you can find. And then when you go to Mass Effect 3 and you get to meet Javik and you get to see like flashbacks to what Prothean culture was like, only flashbacks but minor things, and you see the architecture there has changed. Up until Mass Effect 2, no one really knew what a Prothean was or what they was to look like. So then when you get the revelation that the Collectors were mutated versions of Protheans, it gets your mind going crazy of like, is this what they originally looked like? Or are they that mutated that they no longer look like this? And what other sort of species were they mutated with? Because as we know, Javik doesn't have wings, but the Collectors do have wings. They're kind of like a hive mind. They're like bees. They're like wasps sort of thing. They're very like a hive mind collective and look very different to what Javik looks like, but Javik still kind of looks somewhat like a collector. You know what I mean? So it was one of those where you get that revelation, and it's just incredible that that revelation. Then you learn more about all the, like, you get to go to Ilium and learn more about the Asara. You get to go to Tachanka and learn more about the Krogans, and it's just that thing of flushing out the world. So my first impressions really going into it is the fact of, I love it for expanding the universe, making the Milky Way galaxy feel like a galaxy. It doesn't just feel like I'm experiencing a slice of a huge pie. I'm just having a slither. No, I'm getting the whole pie. And with each game in the series, that pie gets bigger and bigger and more full. And there's apple, there's cherry, and there's blueberries and blackberries, and all types of berries are thrown in. And by the time that you get to the end of Mass Effect 3, you are stuffed because you are full of just incredible characters, incredible world building, incredible gameplay. And Mass Effect 2 was really sort of the beginning of that. I know it's the middle game and there's only 3 games in the series, but Mass Effect 2 kind of set the standard of what to expect. Not just from BioWare, but from Mass Effect moving on to Mass Effect 3. And Mass Effect 3 just exploded and just went off. And again, show it should do, because that's the Reaper invasion. So yeah, I still love it. I still feel like it is an incredible game. It's still one that I highly recommend to people. And I know a lot of people who skipped 1, because as I mentioned, many people got lost on the Citadel, and a lot of people gave up with Mass Effect 1. But a lot of people jumped on during Mass Effect 2 and then went back. And Mass Effect 2 does a fantastic job of sort of introducing you to the world, expects you to know all these things, but at the very beginning, when Shepard is brought back for the Lazarus Project through Cerberus, they have like a quick sort of few important key details. The idea of, like, you was on Vermeer, you didn't kill the Krogan, you chose Captain Anderson, or did you chose Udina? And if you start from a fresh save, then you get to make those choices there. Or if you have a sort of imported save, those choices are already there. But the point is the fact of, it does a good job of kind of getting you up to speed of what is going on before it throws you into the deep end. And yeah, Mass Effect 2, still one of the best. As for my experience playing as FemShep, it's not. I couldn't find any differences in terms of the way I was taught to or the way I was treated. One of my examples when I was playing Mass Effect 1 was that when I saw, I think it was Harkin, and he tried to basically be very sleazy and very sexual towards me because, again, I was a female, and that, you know, it made me really creepy. It made me feel really dirty and disgusting. You know, I felt violated. Didn't really get that here with this one. There was nobody who ever spoke to me differently because I was a woman. There was none of that. And one thing that I said about Mass Effect 1 when I played as FemShep, and it still stands here, is the fact of, I don't know why it took me so long to finally play as FemShep. The voice actress has such a fantastic way with words, and such a fantastic way of betraying anger, betraying joy, betraying happiness, betraying calmness. She's a lot more calmer and a lot more reserved than when she needs to be, in terms of, like, male Shepard, he goes from 0 to 100 very quickly, of like, I love you, but get off my ship, sort of thing. Whereas FemShep, she shouts if she needs to, but very much so she's more of a listener. Best way to explain it, it's hard to explain the dialogue with actually having a piece where you could hear it yourself, but the dialogue is very different in terms of FemShep and the way that she does it, in the way like it is voiced, and I love it for that. So yeah, I haven't got any real experiences that are differences, more so the fact of FemShep is a lot more calmer, and I like it because, again, when you've got all the stuff going on around you with the collectors and that, you need somebody, like I said in the Mass Effect 1, you need someone who's a calm before the storm. You know what I mean? You need someone who's cool, calm, collected, taking all the information in, and it then is making the choice, then is making the sort of tactical decision of shall we do next? Not someone who goes, you do this, you do that. It's very sort of cool, calm, collected, and I really, really enjoy it for that. Now, sort of how I'm going to break down the review. As I mentioned in the introduction, just to recap here, basically, I'm going to review it from each recruit and their loyalty missions, because in Mass Effect 1, the way I reviewed it was from each planet. So from each planet, each experience, I reviewed it that way. In this one, I'm going to just break down each character you meet as when you meet them, as well as talking about their loyalty missions and my thoughts and feelings on the characters. So first and foremost, we have Miranda. Her loyalty mission is saving her sister. Now, I like Miranda. As I've mentioned, I think I said in Mass Effect 1, I like Miranda because she was one of those sort of characters that I always used to romance. And she's an interesting character because she is made to be perfect. Her father made her to be perfect in all aspects, to live longer, to look beautiful, to have the best body, to have the best biotic powers, to be the smartest, to be the quickest, to be the strongest. If she was to break a bone, her body would heal it 10 times faster than the average human. She is made to be perfect, and she knows this. Miranda knows this going in, and she uses it to her advantage. And the elusive man uses that perfectness of her as sort of an advantage. That is why she is one of the elusive man's biggest operatives and one of his best operatives, because he sends her on the most high risk, important jobs, because he needs somebody who is basically perfect in every manner to get the job done. On the flip side, you've got to imagine is the fact that if you are made to be perfect, if you are perfect, right? It's one of those problems. It's one of those things that you've also got to realize the fact of, because you are perfect, everybody expects everything from you, and that there is so much pressure on Miranda's shoulders to do the best job, to make sure she succeeds. Because she is perfect, she has to be perfect. She can never be nothing but perfect. And she sees it as a curse. At first, when you first meet her, she seems like a bit of a stuck-up bitch, but as you get to know her, you realize it's a curse. Like, she uses it because that's what she's got. She uses the talent that she has, because that's all she has. That's her. At the end of the day, she was genetically modified to be this way, but she doesn't want the same for her sister. And that's where it brings into saving her sister in the loyalty mission, where she realized what her dad did to her. She doesn't want the same for her sister, so she has to help go save. You have to go help her save her sister, and you learn a lot more about her this way. And Miranda, I don't romance her much now when I play through. It was more so when I romanced her more when I was younger. More so now, I see her as somebody who is, again, it's weird to say, but somebody who is perfect but is also flawed. She is perfect, yes, but she's also human at the end of the day. And no matter how perfect somebody seems, they have flaws. And I love that. I love how they wrote the character that way. Like, they could have had her like a stuck-up bitch constantly, but they didn't. Like, at first, that's what she seems like, but as you get to know her, you realize she's actually human, and that she's sort of plagued by a lot of issues, and she wants a sister to have a different life. And yeah, that she's kind of on the edge constantly of, like, I've got to do a good job, I can't fail, I've got to, everybody's looking up to me. So for that respect, she's a really fantastic character. Then we have Jacob Taylor. I'll be honest with Jacob, I like Jacob's character, but I don't feel like, for me personally, I never thought there's much to him. I enjoy him as a character. I think he's interesting, but I don't really have much to say about Jacob. He is just a military man, really. He served with the Alliance. Basically got annoyed that the Alliance wasn't doing enough. Then went to Cerberus, because, again, Cerberus are the type of people, instead of to do bureaucracy or to moan or say we should do this or do that, Cerberus just goes and does it. Like, if a colony goes missing, instead of like blaming who did it and when and why, Cerberus just goes out and does it. And Jacob likes that. And Jacob is an interesting character. At first, I do take him around with me at missions at first when I have to, and it's just him and Miranda. But I'll be honest with you, as soon as I get like Mordin or Garrus or Jack, I don't really use Jacob at all, to be honest. His loyalty mission is cool as well. He's looking for his dad. He's trying to find out what happens to him. And when you get to where his dad is, you realize that for about 7 years, his dad was a tyrant. That his dad basically, when their ship crash landed, instead of doing a distress signal and trying to get people out, he basically just lived the life of luxury on a luxury planet. And then he quickly realized after 7 years that the local fauna was poisonous to people, and that if you eat it, it will change your mind, change your sort of genetic cognitive function, and send you crazy. And once the paradise had sort of run out in his mind, then he did the distress signal, and then you have the conflict between Jacob and his father. But that side is interesting. Jacob inside is interesting, but he's just a military man. There's not, for me personally, I never found much to explain about him. He's just Jacob's Jacob. Yeah, you know. Then you have the two characters. Now, these are of the DLC characters. These two I always put together. Reason being is the fact of for two reasons, right? So you want to do these two. So you want to do Kasumi and Zaid as soon as you possibly can for multiple reasons. For one, upgrades. Upgrades are quite expensive at the beginning of the game. Money and credits, you don't have a lot of it. So you want to get the upgrades in as well as resources. So you get Palladium and a bit of Element Zero and things like that. You want to get those as well as if you do Kasumi's mission, you also get the Lotus machine gun, which is incredible, especially if you're playing as Biotic. It's fast firing. Basically, it's like a mini assault rifle. And for me, who plays as a Biotic, because I don't have the speciality to use assault rifles, it is literally shotgun, heavy pistol, and machine pistol. I always get the Lotus as soon as I possibly can because it just makes everything so much more quicker and easier to kill. As well as you have their instant loyalty missions. So these ones you want to do as soon as possible just to stack that dough and collect those resources, basically. As for sort of Kasumi, again, she's a very interesting character. I wish we had more with her. Like, I understand she's a DLC character, but you don't get enough. And this is what kind of annoys me, is the fact of it feels like these sort of DLC characters were just kind of shoehorned in. Because there's not much to them. Once you do their sort of main missions, once you do their missions, you can't go to them like you can go to other characters, other crewmates, and have a chat with them. And even if you've fully done the dialogue with all of the companions, you can still go to them and talk to them again or re-listen to the dialogue if you want to. You can't do that with Zaid. You can't do that with Kasumi. Once their missions are done, that is it. They open new parts of the ship. Zaid, he's down like in the engine bay, and he's where sort of the garbage disposal is. Then you have Kasumi. She is in the starboard bow, I think it is, on the right hand side as you come out of the elevator. Again, you can't really talk to them, can't be doing much. So that's really annoys me in terms of these characters. It feels like they were just pushed in at last minute because there's not a lot of dialogue with them. So it's a shame, really. But Kasumi, she's interesting. She is a master thief, and I love her loyalty mission. You get to go do a heist, and you get like the Lotus pistol, which is really, really handy. You get to take down the Blue Suns. A lot of fun. Zaid, same sort of thing. It made me laugh with Zaid, actually. I went onto Twitter yesterday, and I noticed that Chatsunami basically, I think he did a post or he retweeted a post basically saying who was the most useless character in all of Mass Effect. And I think Chatsu, as well as nearly everybody in the sort of chat thread, was all going Zaid. And then I thought to myself, like, yeah, it is Zaid, because like himself, like, I'll be honest with you, right? Zaid as a character is interesting, right? He is a sort of veteran mercenary. He's been around the block. He founded the Blue Suns. And that his loyalty mission is to basically go and kill the current leader of the Blue Suns, and that you can choose either to kill the leader or you can choose to save all the people. One, obviously, kill the leader is renegade, because if you kill the leader, then all the slaves and all the people in the industrial building get blown up and they die, and then you get to choose if you actually kill Zaid. Actually, I think he's one of the only characters that you can actually choose to leave to die, which again is a very, very interesting, very fascinating that you get given that option. You don't really get given that option. Like, not that I would kill Jack or Garrus or Grunt, but you don't really get given the option. You get given the option to not open Grunt's sort of tube that he's in. You get given the option not to wake up Legion, but again, why would you? It's a Krogan, it's a Geth, of course you're going to wake them up. But to be given the option to basically allow Zaid to die and to not have him at all, you get given that option. And it's a shame that option wasn't given to you by all the other characters, that you're like, you know what, I'm doing the loyalty mission, I don't like the cut of your jib, that's it, nah, I'm going to go Paragon, you can burn. And again, that part in itself, that story, interesting, fascinating. I wish we had more of it. We just don't. And the reason I say that he's one of the worst, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but the reason I agree with it is the fact of his skill base, what he can do, is basically what everybody else can do. He has an incendiary grenade, he has a concussion shot, and I think he might have incendiary rounds. But to be honest with you, what he has in terms of skills are not really that useful. Again, you would use Kasumi and Zaid at first, but again, as soon as you got Morden Solus has the Incinerate skill, which is actually a lot more powerful than the Incinerate grenade, and it does kind of the same thing anyway. So you just use Morden, so that gets rid of Zaid. Kasumi, she has Shadow Strike, which is actually quite useful. So yeah, Zaid, he's an interesting character, but he's a nothing sandwich. There's nothing more to him. And this is what I mean, is the fact of I just wish that these DLC characters, that if you paid money for them, like you get Zaid for free as part of the Cerberus network if you bought Mass Effect 2 on the Xbox. But that doesn't matter. It should have, yeah, you got the first one for free, but you paid for Kasumi in her mission. You should at least give me more, at least both of them, so I can have conversations and chats with them, apart from walking around their rooms and clicking on things and them just giving me brief sort of explanations about, oh, this armor I got off of Krogan, or that piece of art I was dared to steal it by my partner. That sort of thing of like, these bits are fascinating, but I would have liked that in a long form conversation, you know. But I always say get these lines out the way as soon as possible. They will replace Jacob and Miranda as soon as possible, as well as giving you upgrades and resources and like instant loyalty straight away. Then we meet Morden Solus on Omega. I love Morden. He is one of my favorite characters of all time. I actually have a Morden Solus bust on my desk, and it says, so it's a bust of him, and at the very bottom on the stand, it says, somebody else would have gotten it wrong. And I still cry my eyes out when Morden dies, and I will cry my eyes out when I have to play Mass Effect 3 again, and when I talk about that scene, I'm going to cry, so get ready for that, get the tissues ready, or get ready for the skip button, because I know some people probably just want to listen to me get emotional. But I love Morden. He is a fascinating character because as you get to know Morden, at first he is very ruthless. He's very sort of the type of person to just be like, I don't care. He's kind of like Spock, but with a gun. Kind of like he does everything through logic. Of like it makes more logical sense to kill them, or it makes more logical sense to leave them die. Like he's very much of like the first idea that comes into head, the first logical option that comes into head. That is what he goes with, no matter what. He doesn't listen to it. And as you get to know him, and as you sort of change his mind and you start to evolve his character, and especially if you're going a Paragon run, he starts to learn of like, I'm not a monster. I've done monstrous things. And you learn that Morden was responsible for the genophage. He was part of the team that put the genophage into practice. And when you first meet him, he's very sort of, oh, it was fantastic. It was some of the best days of my life. It was some of the most advanced science and some of the theories and things that me and my team got to do every single day. Like he relishes in it. And as you start to get, especially this is on his loyalty mission anyway, when he goes to find his assistant who he believes is being held captive on Tuchanka, he relishes in it. And as you as the character, especially if you're playing as a Paragon, you kind of talk him down and be like, look, you're a monster at the end of the day. You killed all these people. You put the Krogan in, you damned the Krogan to forever be struggle to fight, to have no form of life and have no form of culture. Like the whole cult, like in all fairness, when the Solarians met the Krogans, and before the genophage, this was like just at the beginning of the Rachni War, that the Krogans had just nuked themselves in war, basically. And then the Solarians brought them up and sort of gave them a purpose to fight the Rachni. And just when the Krogans was like, okay, we fought the Rachni, we saved you, like, you know, can we have some land? Can we thrive? Can we prosper? Like, we've destroyed our planet of Tuchanka. Can we have a chance to expand? And the Council and the Solarians and Taurians and Sari and everybody went, no. And the Krogans went, screw you, I'm going to do it anyway. And because how quick the Krogans produce, basically they was like, because one Krogan is like worth 1,000 men. One Krogan is a tank. One Krogan is an army, right? So having how quick they produce, obviously the genophage had to be made. It didn't have to be, but in logically to the Slayerians and the whole council, it had to be. And then it stunted them, and that they weren't able to produce as quick. Like they could still produce. It didn't kill them out completely, but it stunted them. So only so many out of so many could have kids, and not many of the women were fertile, and hardly many of the men were fertile. And it was just one of these things where Morden at first he relishes in it, but when he realizes what he did was wrong, then he starts to kind of get the idea that, look, I'm not a monster. I did cruel things, but I can change, that I can make amends. And you get given the choice at the end of it when you find that Morden's older sister isn't held captive by this clan on Chachanka, that he is actually working with this clan to kind of help them to cure the genophage. You get given the option of like, do you want to save the genophage sort of research data that could come in useful, and it does come in useful for Mass Effect 3. We'll get there when we get to Mass Effect 3. Or you can choose to destroy it. I always went, because even if I've always played Paragon, I've never done Renegade, but I spoke about this with Chatsu on his podcast when he had me on talking about Mass Effect 1. We both sort of came to the conclusion that no matter what you decide, whether you're doing a Renegade run or a Paragon run, what happened to the Krogans was absolutely disgusting and was wrong, and morally just disgraceful, right? And it's one of those where it's like, I always say to Morden, save the data, redeem yourself, give you a chance to redeem yourself. And he does in Mass Effect 3. And for that is why I love him so much, because he's such a complex character. And yeah, his ending is so heroic and so painful, and just, yeah, it had to be him, because somebody else would have gotten it wrong. It was just, what a great end. But again, we'll get there when we get to Mass Effect 3. Then again, same on Omega, we meet Garrus Vicarian, aka Archangel. Obviously, we don't know it's Garrus yet, but when we meet him, it's like, Garrus! And I remember playing Mass Effect 2 for the first time and meeting Garrus again, and it was just like meeting your best friend. I tried to romance him again in this game. I couldn't do it. I met Tali, and Tali appeared, and I'm like, oh God, I'm falling in love with Tali again, all over again. I did try to flirt with him, and I did flirt with him for a bit. But as soon as you get Tali on later as a companion, oh yeah, I couldn't help myself. I just like I like Tali. I love the Quarians. I just can't. I'm sorry. But well, I'm not going to go into much about Garrus, because again, we've already got there. But what I like about his character here is that since the years that you have been quote unquote deceased, Garrus went on. He got away from CSEC, and kind of the events of Mass Effect 1 sort of showed him, especially most importantly, Commander Shepard showed him that you don't have to sit around to wait for results. That if you're being told by a lot of people that you're wrong, that we have to do it this way and not that way, and that basically Garrus went, you know what, I'm going to do what Commander Shepard did. I'm going to cut through all the red tape, and I'm going to go straight to where the problem is. So he goes to Omega, he sets up his own crew, basically doing what Commander Shepard did, and then decides, you know what, I'm going to do like a vigilante group, and we're just going to take down all problems. So he goes to Omega, and he starts getting under the skin of all of the mercenary groups, the Blue Suns, the Eclipse, Blood Pack, as well as Cerberus, and basically anybody who does anything wrong. He kind of like Batman, basically. He swoops in with his team, takes them out, done. Like justice there and then. No court, no judiciary system. It's like, you broke the law, you spread in red sands, boom, shut rifle, dead, done. And his sort of loyalty mission is kind of getting revenge for that. When you meet him as Archangel, you realize that his whole team was betrayed, and that his whole team is dead, and that his loyalty mission is getting revenge on the person that was the reason for that. And you have two options. When you track this guy down, you have the option to either stand in the way of Garrus so Garrus can't get a shot off on him, or you can step to the side and Garrus gets a shot and kills the guy. You can easily just step aside and let Garrus shoot him, and that's fine, because again, Garrus has got his revenge, he's done. Or you can stand in front, you can warn the bloke, And Garrus comes to the realization that, again, he's not a monster. Revenge is not a good thing, and that he wants to do right. And the best way to do right is not by killing this guy. And the guy tries to then go off and do better. And Garrus, the character that I know, wouldn't want me to step aside, even though he says it at the time. Garrus wouldn't want me to step aside. He'd want me to try and talk to this guy to realize and try to figure out why he betrayed his team. And I can't remember the reason now, but the reason he gave was a good enough reason for Garrus to go, you know what, go, just go. Like, I've come to terms with it. I don't need to kill you to feel better or to get revenge. Revenge is never a good idea. And yeah, that the idea of the Garrus that I know, that's what he would do. So that was always the option that I went. Then we have Jack. I love Jack. Jack is a firecracker. I love her. She's great. Again, another character that I've romanced once or twice. Not as many as like Liara or Tali. But I've romanced Jack because, again, she's a renegade. She's a firecracker. She is she's fantastic. Okay, she is just, yeah, she's wonderful. But I love Jack, and I like her character more so because I've read the book Mass Effect Ascension, which, by the way, go check that review out. It's on YouTube and it's on my Spotify. As I mentioned in that one, and I'll briefly mention it here because we've got a lot to talk about. And if you want to know my full thoughts, obviously listen to that review. But one of the things that I love about Jack, and the reason why I love her character so much, is the fact of when you read Mass Effect Ascension, you learn about what Cerberus is doing in terms of trying to find the pinnacle of human biotic possibility. And that involves Gillian, and that involves those sort of characters. But when you meet Jack and you learn more about Jack's history and Jack's past and the experiments that was going on to her, you quickly realize that Jack is the genesis. She is the original prodigal daughter, and that she was taken and she was experimented on, and she was meant to be she was meant to be Gillian, but it went wrong, and that the sort of scientists went rogue and basically just started pitting the kids against each other, kind of like a biotic fight club, even though we don't talk about Fight Club. And you feel for her, you feel so sorry for her, and this kind of ties into her sort of loyalty mission where you go to the facility where she was being experimented on, and in her mind she believes that she made it out because she was the fastest, she was the strongest, she was the most powerful. And as you go through the facility, which, by the way, I recommend that you take Miranda with you on this loyalty mission, one, for some unique dialogue, but also the fact it gives Miranda a chance to see what Cerberus is really like. Not what Cerberus is like from what Elusive Man has told her and the missions that Elusive Man is sent her on, but the things that Cerberus has done and will do to get results. Especially because how Jack hates Miranda, because Jack basically calls Miranda a cheerleader and a bitch and all that. But when you get to realize, and Jack realizes that actually what happened was different, and that she wasn't the one that broke out, is that the kids started a fight, and that allowed her to get out. And that the reason that she is alive is because of sort of the other kids and that sort of thing. It was because she was the strongest and most powerful. She could make it out like that, but also the fact of the kids having to escape, that's how she was able to escape. And then when you finally get to her room and she realizes that the mirror that she was banging on was a two-way mirror, and that the kids could never see her, and she always thought the kids were ignoring her. That's why she came to resent the kids, and that's why she came to hate the kids, because it was designed that way. It was designed that Subject Zero was going to be the best, and she had to be the best. And to be the best, you had to kind of seclude her from everybody else. So the kids in the research center hated her and were scared of her because they were led to believe that she was a monster. And Jack was led to believe that the kids hated her and that they ignored her and that they didn't like her. And that fueled her rage, and that's when they started pitting each other against each other. And she's a very tragic character, especially when you meet her in the third game, when you see what she has become and where she ends up. It's a lovely sort of circle where she began, where you meet her, to her revelation and her moment with Miranda. There's a moment on the ship after you do the loyalty mission where Miranda and Jack sort of butt heads, and you kind of pull them apart. Of like, look, Miranda, you've got to realize what Cerberus did was disgusting. Jack, you've got to realize that you're not alone, that you're part of a crew now, and that it wasn't your fault. You can't blame yourself. You can't blame anybody else. You blame Cerberus, blame the Elusive Man. Just don't blame Miranda. It's not her fault. She wasn't involved. And her arc is a lovely one, and I can't wait to talk about it in more detail when we get to Mass Effect 3. But I love her as a character. She's very fast and very interesting, and she's very honest and open and blurts out. Of like, she says to you blatantly, like, "Come on, Shepard, you know you've got this ship. Let's unshackle it. Let's get out of the way of Cerberus, and let's go be pirates." And it is quite tempting, because she's quite tempting the way she says it. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, why not go off with my bald-headed girlfriend? Let's go do it, you know? Obviously I don't, but it is tempting. Anyway, moving on quickly, swiftly, from Jack, we meet Grunt. Obviously, we go originally to get Okia, who is a Krogan scientist. Then when we meet Okia, that he has this sort of the perfect Krogan, this pure blood Krogan that he has made from collector technology. And sadly, Okia dies defending this perfect specimen, Grunt. And I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Every team needs a Krogan. Everybody needs a Krogan. You had Rex in the first game. It wouldn't make sense to not have a Krogan in this game. And to have Grunt there, who is tank born. He doesn't know who he is or what he is. He only knows what sort of Okia and sort of the imprints in the tank told him he was or meant to be. And this leads on to his sort of rite of passage, which is basically a Krogan coming of age and getting to go to Tuchanka, get to kill Freshamores, kill Verins, and being able just to be a badass with a Krogan. I love it. Again, I love Grunt. There's not really much to say about him here for me personally. In Mass Effect 2, sorry. Mainly because he has a lot more to do, a lot more to say, and there's a lot more importance when it comes to Mass Effect 3. But Grunt, he's an interesting character. Again, he's a Krogan. Everybody needs a Krogan. Everybody needs somebody who is just the tank. And I love taking Grunt with me. In most missions, I have Grunt with me, and I have him with his Claymore Krogan shotgun. And you can just hear it. Like, even if you're not focusing on it, you're focusing on like killing like blue suns, you can just hear that Claymore shotgun in the back go like, poof, and you just know that Grunt is having a whale of a time just blowing mercs to pieces. So yeah, always take Grunt with me. Always love it, enjoy it. Then finally we get to meet back up with Tali Zora Vast Normandy. Well, she's not Tali Zora Vast Normandy yet, but Tali Zora. I've mentioned it many times before. I love Tali. I mentioned it earlier. I romanced her, but instead of romancing Garrus, even though my original plan was to romance Garrus, couldn't help it. I can't help it. I just love Tali, and I love the Quarians, and I won't get into it again because I went into a whole TED talk when I in my Mass Effect Ascension book. And I won't go into full details about Tali because again I did that when I spoke about Mass Effect 1. What I will say though is the fact of I love Tali's loyalty mission because you get to go to the migrant fleet. You get to go there. You get to see what it looks like. Having all this time of hearing about it, hearing what other races talk about it, reading the book and seeing what it says in the book about the migrant fleet, my imagination of what the migrant fleet looks like, and then to finally see what the migrant fleet actually is. And then I'll be honest with you, my imagination at first, when I first read that book, didn't compare to what you see. And that you see all these huge life ships, and then you have all these smaller ships around, and to actually go in and to see all the other admirals, to get to talk to the other admirals, get to learn more about the migrant fleet and a lot of the admirals' feelings. You get to meet proper like Quarians that, like, how can I explain it in terms that it's going to make sense? Obviously, all Quarians hate the Geth, but when you get to the migrant fleet, they are edging up for war. They're gearing up for war. Like, the way the Quarians see it, like, we have done 3 centuries. We are running out of resources. Like, there is no planet that we can go to. Nobody wants to give us any help. We're at our wits' end. The Geth are the way the Quarians see it, the Geth are weak now that Sovereign is gone. Obviously, in their minds, they feel like because of Shepard's actions with Sovereign and that with the Reapers, like they don't care about the Reapers are coming. They couldn't care less. Their concept and idea is that the Geth are now weak after the loss of their god, and that this is the time to strike. And you have that moment to kind of explain to them in your best you possibly can of like, look, don't go to war. The Reapers are coming. I need the migrant fleet. You have the biggest fleet in the Milky Way galaxy. I need you. And of the admirals, some of them listen, some of them don't. And when you play Mass Effect 3, you realize nobody listened. And the Quarians went to war with the Geth during the war with the Reapers, which makes no sense whatsoever. You'd think that they would stop fighting, but they don't. And what I love about going to Tally's sort of loyalty mission is the fact that when you get there, you find that Tally is on trial because of the actions of her father, and that she is being accused of bringing Geth technology to the migrant fleet, activated Geth technology, not deactivated, and that caused them to lose one of their lab ships. And as you go through it, you realize that Tally isn't to blame, and that her father is to blame, that she would send Geth technology deactivated, and that her dad would reactivate it to test on it, to test weapons on the Quarians, test weapons on the Geth, as well as to experiment on them. Obviously, because the Quarians just see the Geth as they don't see him as life, they just see him as they're our creation. And it's one of those where you get given the chance to kind of, if you're Paragon, you get a chance to properly defend her, and that defend her right. And again, as me who loves Tally, I will defend this woman till the end of my days. So I'm up there, Paragon, and I'm like, if it wasn't for Tally, you wouldn't know as what the Geth. You wouldn't have the data that we uncovered in Mass Effect 1. You wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have that. Tally is the reason why the migrant fleet is still going, and all that jazz. And it's one of those where like you feel so proud. You're like, that's my girl. That's my girl. There she is. I love you, Pookie. I don't Pookie. Oh, where'd that come from? But yeah, like Tally, she's incredible, and you get the chance to call her Tali'Zorah Vast Normandy, and that is her name moving forwards because you are her captain, and she is assigned by the migrant fleet to your sort of captainage, to your vessel, to your ship. And that's the way it works, is that whatever ship you are, so it's like Tali'Zorah Vas, I don't know, Tali'Zorah Vas Titanic. That's the only ship that can come to mind. The ship, if anything. But so whatever ship that you're on, that is your last name. And so you have given the opportunity to be like Tali'Zorah Vast Normandy, and it rings so well. And I think she likes it. I think she prefers it. She loves the migrant fleet, obviously, but she just anywhere where Shepard is, I think that's where she really wants to be. And I'll happily have her all day, every day. Then moving on to Samantha, she's a Justicar. Now, again, this is another one of them times of like fascinating bit of lore where like the Asari, they've been around for centuries. They're one of like the oldest species. They're one of the first species one of the most advanced species as well. They are the species that were the first people that discovered the Citadel, and with a civilization that old and that advanced, to see that their version of the police. So you've got the police as normal, then you have the Justicars, and the Justicars are kind of like I don't know how the best way to explain it. It's kind of like a Spectre without the Spectre status. They can do whatever they want in Asari space. Any planet, any place they go, they've got full jurisdiction. They are like super cop. Basically, it's like RoboCop, but without the robotics. Like they are the super cops. They can do whatever they want. They cannot be stopped, right? And meeting Samara and getting to know her and learning more about the Justicars, and that you talk to sort of Liara, and she's like, I always wanted to be a Justicar. Every Asari grows up to wanting to be a Justicar because they are just the pinnacle. They are just badass. And then you have her sort of loyalty mission is to track down her Adat Yachi daughter. For anybody who doesn't know, a Adat Yachi is a how to explain it, because again I'm going to have to go into full details because it's going to be strange otherwise, so hold on to your butts. An Adat Yachi is a Asari who has kind of like, okay, in terms of Halo, in terms of rampancy, so rampancy in Halo is done by an AI, and that the AI with a lot of information, a lot of data, tends to start going crazy, and then they kind of think themselves to death. And Adalachi is kind of the same, but the idea is that they are so powerful and that they are so strong, not just in biotics, but they are so strong that they are just able to. They're like predators. They're like hunters, and that they can kill you by physical touch. That they kind of. I don't know how to. It's a strange one to explain to you. It's basically they are seen as the thing of nightmares, and that you realize when you play Mass Effect 3 that the Adadayachi, anybody who has signs of it, they get sent away. It's kind of they get shunned from Asari culture. Like Asari don't talk about them. It's like this happens to some Asari people, but we don't talk about it. It's kind of like we put them in like it's not like an asylum, but it's kind of like an asylum. It's kind of like we'll hide them away on a planet, and it's so they can live their days in calm. It's like they're stuck there. They can never leave, but it's kind of like a hotel in a way. Best to explain it. And that Samara's daughter is a Yachi, and one thing that I like, and I've just realised it, I was kind of wrong in terms of Zaid. You do get given the option here to either kill Samara or kill her daughter, because both of them are really powerful biotics. I've never killed Samara. I've never had her daughter on board, because you like one of the things that I love, and I've never done it, but I've seen videos. Because she's Adadayachi, even though she's incredibly powerful, she is incredibly unstable at the same time. And that there is a moment where you can romance Samara's daughter, and she will do sort of the hero, like with Asari go black eyes, and like they mind meld each other's your mind and their mind, and then you embrace each other, and then sort of sexy time happens. With Samara's daughter, it's different. When she does that, she kills you, and the game just ends. Like literally, like you die in that moment. I've never done it. I've only ever seen YouTube clips of that scene, but I've always killed her daughter. I've never killed Samara, and I won't, because she's a fantastic character. But I like, again, given the option there. I was wrong earlier. You do get given the option to kill this one, but as far as I know, this is apart from Zaid and Samara. I don't think you get the option actually again. No, if I'm looking at the rest of the characters, no, you don't. But again, I like Samara. She's interesting. The Justicars are just fascinating. And the Adadayachi, that whole part of it now is fascinating. It gets quite scary and creepy when you get to Mass Effect 3, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Then we have Thane Krios. I love Thane. I do. He, next to Morden, he is one of my next favorite characters. I cried when he died, and I always cry. But the same stage is the fact of like Thane, even though he's like on death's door by the time Mass Effect 3 comes around, he still manages to single-handedly take out and almost defeat an assassin. And he would have done it if the assassin had played fair. Of course, he ain't going to, but he did a dirty trick and Thane got it. But like, he almost got his ass kicked by somebody who is dying, and that's just how badass Thane is. And I love the Drell. The Drell as a race, we don't get enough of them in Mass Effect. The idea that the Drell, that the planet that they lived on was dying. It couldn't sustain them anymore. That they were growing, that their species was growing, and there wasn't enough resources. That the temperature was changing. That the planet was basically dying, and that if it wasn't for the Hanar to come and save them, then the whole species would have been wiped out. And even though the Drell sent thousands and millions of ships, it wasn't enough, and that some people were left behind on the planet, and they died and they perished. And those that survived, that went to the Drell, the Hanar homeworld, got ill because of the wet and humid environment of the Drell, of the Hanar homeworld. That the Drells got a sort of disease that was incurable, that would slowly kill them, and the Hanar basically use the Drell as a security force, as their own sort of small army, and they train them from a very young age to kill, to be assassins, to be warriors, to be soldiers. So that's all the Drell know. All the Drell know is how to fight because that's all they get trained. But they don't see themselves as slaves. They don't see themselves as workers. They are grateful to the Hanar because they know if the Hanar hadn't have come and saved them, they would have died and the whole species would have died. So they are happy to do the work for the Hanar. They're happy to build the ships and build buildings and be their army and be their bodyguard. Like, they're happy to do it. They just don't see themselves as slavery. They see it as like grateful of like, you did us the biggest service anybody could ever do a species. We are going to pay it back tenfold. And we don't get enough Drell. We do not get enough. We don't meet enough Drell. We don't see enough Drell. And it is a real shame because the Drell is such a fascinating race. But then again, when you've got a universe that's so huge in terms of story and then characters and races, you just wouldn't have the time. Like, I love the Volus. I love the Elcor. I love the Drell. Don't get enough of them. We don't get to see a lot of them in combat, really. We get that one drugged up out of Volus on Ilium, where he's that drugged up on red spice that he thinks he's Bartic God. And that doesn't pay off at all. Like, it's funny, but like, we don't actually get to see them fight or anything like that, and it's a shame. We were robbed of Elcor battle sort of soldiers on the front line with giant cannons on their backs. You know what I mean? We were robbed. It was originally planned for Mass Effect 3, but they took it out. But yeah, the Drell Thane, incredible race, incredible character. His loyalty mission is to reconnect with his son because his son's basically going down the same route as Thane is, and that the problem is the fact that because Thane was so entrenched with his work, because he was a master assassin, he went from one job to the next job to the next job to the next job. He wasn't there when Thane's wife died, when his son's mother died, and his son sort of blames him for that. Like, you were never there, you were never around for me, and to kind of get back at his father, he goes into the same sort of line of work that his dad's in, assassination. Thane finds out about this. He's like, no, I don't want my son to go down the same route as me, and that I'm dying, and that I want to make amends before I'm dead. And one of my biggest amends I want to make and I want to fix is with my son. He wants a second chance with his son. And it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful thing. And you get given the option to like, to save his son or not save his son. Obviously, I'm always going to save his son. But it's a beautiful thing of like, he's dying and he's trying to make amends for all the people that he's killed in his past, of all the things that he's done, and all the things that he's missed. Again, his wife's death, he wasn't there for his son. And it brings to a very beautiful moment for when Thane does die in Mass Effect 3, which again, we will get there, but very heartfelt. And I cry a lot when I play Mass Effect 3. It's why I don't play Mass Effect 3 a lot. It's one that I love and enjoy, but I don't look forward to it because I know there's so much heartache in Mass Effect 3. Same reason I don't play Gears of War 3. I can't handle watching Dom die again. It's too much. It is too much. I'm going to do it for this review in terms of Mass Effect 3, but it hurts. It really, really hurts. But yeah, I love Thane. Then we have Legion, which is the Geth. But we get to see Legion when we go to the Derelict Reaper. Again, Legion's a fascinating character because up until this game, we have never spoken to a Geth. Geth have never spoken to us. And as far as you know about Geth are not interested in speaking to anything, any sentient, not sentient, sapient sort of species. They don't want to talk to us. They're not interested in us. They are literally about dominating and taking over. And obviously, in the first game, they were with Sovereign, and they just wanted to kill all synthetic life. And when you get to Mass Effect 2, it's kind of the same in a few missions, or whenever you meet Geth, they try to kill you. And obviously, from what Tally's told you and what you've learned from the other Quarians, Geth are bad, Geth are this, Geth are that. Then when you actually meet Legion and you realize that Legion is unique, and I'm not going to spoil why Legion's unique because you learn about that in Mass Effect 3. So I won't spoil that here. Of all the other spoilers I've given, that's one I won't give away till we get there. But you realize that Legion is unique and that he can talk, and that Legion is not a single Geth. He is a Geth in terms of you see him and he's just one singular Geth, one singular robot, whatever you want to call it, right? But the way the Geth work is that the Geth are again like a hive mind, a logic mind. That they are that you when you talk to one Geth, you are talking to 1,000 Geth at the same time, but they're all talking at the same time, and they're all thinking at the same time. So that's what they call Legion, because he is many. If that makes sense, right? And through talking to him, you learn more about what Geth culture's like, how they see themselves, how they see synthetic life, why they followed the Reapers, why they called the Reapers the old gods. I can't remember the name now, but he actually says Sovereign's real name, and that Sovereign was the name that the Protheans gave to him, but his real name was not Narcissa. Nessica, something like that. It was a very beautiful name, actually, for something so horrifically dangerous and horrible, and terrifying. But you learn more about the Geth, and that's important because you can sympathize. The more you know about something, the more you can understand and sympathize with it. And up until this point, you don't have any sympathy for the Geth. Well, I always did, because I always, again, as I said in Mass Effect 1, I always thought it was a bit strange and unfair that all the Geth did was just question as to who were they, what's their purpose, what is life, sort of thing. And the Quarians got scared and they tried to shut them off, and all the Geth tried to do was defend themselves. And you learn more about that when you get to Mass Effect 3. And Legion tells you basically, like we see the creators, we see the Quarians as the enemy, and the Quarians see them as the enemy, and both of them basically see each other as the bad guys. And if they would just come together and talk, they would both realize that they were both in the wrong, that the Quarians shouldn't have tried to shut them down, and the Geth should have tried to reach out, tried to kind of explain as to why they fought back. Not just try to annihilate them completely, of like, look, we only did it because you were going to kill us. But the Quarians had made life. They had done the impossible, what they thought was impossible. They played God and they found out. They found life. They discovered it. However, again, if you want to get religious about it, I'm not going to get into it. But whatever it is they did, life was made, and they tried to purge it. They tried to get rid of it. They tried to get rid of a whole race. And the Quarians defended, and the Quarians defended themselves, and the Geth defended themselves. And you learn more about this by talking to Legion and turning, and you have these dialogues between Tali and Legion where Tali realizes that the Geth, that everything that she was taught, everything she knows about the Geth was completely wrong. And she starts to question things. And it's great when you get to Legion's loyalty mission, where you get to go to the heretic station and you get to stop this virus, because they're basically, when the Reapers were there, when Sovereign was there, he transmitted a virus into the Geth. This is how he got the Geth to kind of follow him, not just by using the ideology of like the old machine, of like, I'm a big machine and big and powerful, follow me. It was also the fact that he put a virus into the Geth that basically made them stronger, more powerful, and that it would kind of make them fight for the Reapers when the Reapers got to the Milky Way galaxy. Obviously, Legion discovers this, and you get given the option to rewrite the code or to delete, or basically to delete it. If you rewrite the code, it makes Geth more stronger, more powerful, but you also, again, if you rewrite it, there's less chance of the Reapers taking over the Geth when they get here, and that Legion then has the opportunity to control. And that is a really big, important thing when you get to Mass Effect 3, which I won't talk about here. We'll talk about when we get to there. I always take Tali with me on this one, because Tali, again, kind of like the Jack Miranda, it kind of gives Tali a new insight into what the Geth life is like, what is like being on a Geth ship, and why it's important that the Geth should be allowed to live, and that if to rewrite it, that gives a chance to peace, that gives a chance to have Legion save his race, and that the Quarians could save theirs, and all the Quarians would have to do would be to stop attacking the Geth, and then that would give Legion the opportunity to stop trying to defend himself and his people and free up chances to talk and to basically come to make amends and kind of make a truce. But we'll get there when we get to sort of Mass Effect 3. But Legion being sort of the last character you meet, absolutely fantastic. I never thought I'd ever get to have friends with a Geth, let alone an ally. And he's one of the most unique characters you get to meet, and he plays such a pivotal, important role in Mass Effect 3 that I can't wait to talk about it. But you wanted, before I move on to sort of talking about the actual game, like bits and pieces about the game itself, you want to do all of these side missions, all the recruitment, all the loyalty missions before you go to the Derelict Reaper. Because as soon as you go to the Derelict Reaper, you will get the Reaper FTL drive, the faster than light travel drive. And when you get that, it will get put into the ship. And as soon as it gets put in the ship, then the next place that you'll go, the next mission you'll go on, the game will basically take the shuttle, because they installed the chip onto one of the shuttles at first to make sure that it works. And then as soon as you do that, then the collectors will attack the Normandy, steal your crew, and then it's a race against time. And if you haven't done everything by that point, if you go off then and do loads of recruitment, and you do loads of loyalty missions, and you do a lot of the side missions, the more that you do, by the time that you get to the collector base, the percentage of the crew that you can save, your crew as well as colonists that you can save, goes down. So imagine if you did that, and then you did all the side missions and all the loyalty missions, and then you did the collector base. By the time you get there, the only person who would be alive would be Dr. Chakwas, but your whole crew would be dead. And that's why I always say to people, I was like, look, do all the DLC, and I'll talk about when I get to the DLC in a second. Do all the DLC you can as soon as straight away, apart from the Arrival DLC, obviously. Do the DLC characters, do all the planets, do all your resource hunting, do everything before you go to the Derelict Reaper and you meet Legion. I know Legion's a fantastic character, and I would love Legion on my team for longer. But when you get the FTL, when you get the Reaper FTL, that's when things start to get crunch time. And if you don't have most of the missions and things done, you won't be able to get all your crew back. You'll probably get half to none. Depends on how long it takes you to actually go rescue them. So I always say, get everything done as soon as you can, right? Now I want to talk about some other things about the game. So improved gameplay. As I mentioned in the introduction, they took the gameplay from Mass Effect 1 and improved it. They gave you thermal clips, and I love that. And I spoke about in the introduction. It gives you an option, especially when you're playing the higher difficulties, to adapt, to be like, look, I don't have a lot of ammo left, so I'm going to have to use my abilities. I'm going to have to use my teammates' special skills and abilities. It's a lot more smoother now. Like, you can vault over things. You can I kind of think it as Gears of War, slamming yourself against cover. I always call it slam cover whenever I talk about it with friends about Gears of War, because that's what you do in Gears of War. Whenever you find cover, you just slam yourself against it. I don't know how they don't dislocate and break their shoulders, how brutally they bash themselves up against it. Same sort of idea. It's like cover shooting mostly in Mass Effect 2. You bash yourself against sort of cover and then you shoot. I always play as a biotic, mainly because you get Shockwave, and Shockwave, especially when that's fully upgraded. Oh, trust me. Oh, you can I always throw in Shockwave as soon as possible. I always upgrade my biotics as quick as I possibly can in terms of the upgrades. Upgrades menu in the lab with Morden, as well as trying to get upgrade the skill points, upgrade the biotics, because when you can do those Shockwave attacks, it's a chef's kiss. Instantly makes the game a lot more fun. And I've played all of them. I've played Adept, I've played the Engineer, I've played Soldier. I always play as Vanguard, so as biotic. But when you play like Mass Effect 1 and you see how like the physics and the particles and how it looks with Mass Effect 1, and then you play Mass Effect 2, and everything just looks a lot more shiny, a lot more glitz and glamorous. And then you have the ragdoll physics where you could just like especially when you've done the shockwave 100% and you just throw that out and then people just go flying everywhere. Especially like it makes it easy if you're in areas where there's a lot of places where characters can fall off. If you just send shockwaves, you don't even have to kill most of them. They'll go slung high in the air and they'll just get shot outside of the map and die. And you just be able to blitz through like a bionic sort of badass. So I love it. Love playing that. And I'm going to talk about sort of the story DLC here before we wrap up things in the end. So you have the Cerberus network that came with the game. So with the Xbox 360 version when it first came out, with that you get to go back to the Normandy crash site. You get to walk around there and you get to sort of relive a few memories. It's always lovely going to do that. I always enjoy going to the Normandy crash site. Again, you can pick up some resources here. A few sort of I think Element Zero and Palladium and a few other things you can pick up here. So yeah, do it as early as possible, get out the way, get a few resources, get some money, get some credits, and get to see sort of the Normandy crash site. Again, the Firewalker project, this one, again, do it as soon as possible, resources, you get the Hammerhead vehicle, which is a lot of fun, powerful, but armor like butter. Like generally that all it takes is like 1 or 2 shots and it's screaming at you, then it explodes. Like the armor on it is terrible. It packs a punch and it's quick. But when Cerberus was developing the armor for that thing, they really, really, well, as John Hammond would say, spared no expense. Cerberus spared all the expenses, right? They didn't spend any money at all on the armor, but they spent everything on the thrusters and the technology and the cannon. Because that thing, it's got armor like butter. It's terrible, right? But again, these sort of side missions that you get, these things you can do, again, get your resources as much as possible. You get something for your crew quarters. Again, with Master Crash Site, you can recover your old N7 helmet, and you can put that on your stand in your crew, in your sort of captain's room, as well as Project Firewalk. At the end of it, you find a Prothean orb, a Prothean sphere. Apparently, from what I've heard about this sphere, that there was originally going to be a lot more to it, and that they were going to expand the story either in Mass Effect 2 or Mass Effect 3, but they never did. I think it was because writers changed or something like that. I can't remember. This is what I heard online. I'm not sure if it's true or not. But it's kind of a shame how like you follow this trail, you go around the galaxy trying to find this team that went missing, that were looking for this Prothean technology. You finally find it, but then you don't get no sort of payoff for it. A bit of a bummer. But yeah, do the Normandy crash site, do the Firewalker as soon as possible, as well as Kasumi and Zaid, get them out the way. Basically get all that DLC stuff out the way as soon as possible. Then you got Project Overlord. So this concerns the events of experimental virtual intelligence that has gone rogue. This is a Cerberus a base that are experimenting kind of Clockwork Orange, best way I can explain it. Clockwork Orange experimenting on this guy. What they want to do, they want to integrate a human brain, a savant, sort of this guy who is a sort of savant with maths, and they want to sort of connect his brain with the Geth network, and they want to make sort of this virtual intelligence. Goes rogue, obviously, goes wrong, and you're sent in to kind of solve it. It's a fantastic story, and I really, really enjoy it. But it's one of those where you just want to get it done as soon as possible. You want to get it in, get it done. I always take Miranda and Jacob with me because they're Cerberus operatives, and then Miranda has a few extra sort of bits of dialogue. But again, I always do it early. I do it before I actually go to Omega, so it's one of the earliest things that I do. So those are the only characters I've got with me. It's an interesting DLC. It has a good payoff. I love being able to see the Geth. I don't like going around in the Hammerhead. As I mentioned, it's terrible. But for what it is and what it tries to do, the story is quite interesting. And the end result is quite sad, to be honest. It's quite a shame what happens to one of the characters in the DLC anyway, not one of the main characters, and that the choices that you make, you either get to leave him at the mercy of Cerberus, or you get to send him off to Grissom Academy. I always send him off to Grissom Academy, and that you meet him again when you are playing Mass Effect 3. And it's wonderful to meet him again, to see he looks a lot better than when you saw him in this game. And also he is a very good, important war resource when you get to, because the whole point of Mass Effect 3 is to kind of collect war assets, and he is a very good war asset to have. And again, I like how they kind of carry his character on and evolve him from there. But yeah, it's one of those you just want to do as soon as possible. Then we have the layer of the Shadow Broker. This concerns Liara Tassoni and a history with an information dealer known as the Shadow Broker. So for this one, again, the infamous Shadow Broker is always rumors and people talking about him, but you never actually get to talk to him. You don't even know if the Shadow Broker is a he. Could be a she. We don't even know what race they are or who they are, where they are, that sort of thing. And following this, you get to sort of get Liara in your crew again, which is nice to have her in your crew. And as you're going through, she's like, remember the old days, Shepard, where you could hack things and all you had to do was rub Metagel on it, and then Liara would be like, yeah, some people are really unhappy that was changed. It just small little things like that. It's like it's a callback to Mass Effect 1, but also it's calling out the fans, because obviously a lot of fans complain that you have these hacking mini games now. When back in the day, all you really had to do, if you could do the small little mini game, or you could just rub Metagel on it and Omnigel, sorry, and that worked. And I did that for most of it when I was playing Mass Effect 1 for the review. I was like, Omnigel. And because I had the best weapons and armor, I just salvaged all of my armor, and it helps you get through the game a lot quicker. But yeah, being able to meet the Shadow Broker, finding out that the Shadow Broker is not what you expected. It's not one of the known races. It was a brand new race, and you find out there was a Yaug, and that you learn more about the Yaug and how they are a sort of, they're not a spacefaring species, but they are a species that is kind of close to what we are now, close to where humans are now, but probably a couple years behind us, if that makes sense. In terms of probably 50, 60 years behind, maybe 100 years. But they are very smart, very intelligent, but they're very beast-like. The reason why they're a race that nobody knows about, talks about, is that when the council first sent sort of sent a group in basically to introduce themselves, to say hello, sort of kind of let's cooperate, let's learn each other, let's help each other. The first sort of people that were sent into the Owl's planet were killed and slaughtered and ripped to shreds. And since then, that whole planet was just sort of taped off. It was like, no one can go here, no one can land here. We're leaving them, but we're monitoring them, but we're leaving them. So to find out that this Shadow Broker all these years has been a Yaug, absolutely incredible, incredibly fascinating, an incredible DLC. And also, if you have a love interest with Liara from Mass Effect 1, you can rekindle that love interest here. It's quite beautiful. It's quite lovely. I didn't, because as I said, when I was doing Mass Effect 1, I kind of had to basically say no. I had to put her down. But she still likes me. I don't blame her. I like her too. But I'm doing Tally, okay? In this run, I'm all Tally, okay? I'm all Tally Zora. So I'm trying not to look at the blue woman over there in the corner. You know what I mean? It's like, no, don't look. Don't give me them eyes. I'm looking over here. But yeah, do the Shadow Broker as soon as you meet Liara. As soon as you can, you meet Liara on Ilium and you help her out with the Shadow Broker problem. And as soon as you do that, you can go give her the evidence from Cerberus, what she needs to find the Shadow Broker. And then at the end of it, Liara becomes the new Shadow Broker. And that leads into sort of the events of when you get to Mass Effect 3, of why she has a Cerberus network and that sort of thing. And but yeah, fantastic DLC. Absolutely love it and enjoy it. I always love playing through it. And again, it's just to have Liara back as well. And then finally, we have the Arrival DLC. So this concerns the events of an intimate of invasion of a highly advanced machine race, the Reapers. This one, it's a fantastic DLC, but it's so hard hitting because in this DLC, right? So the idea, so I always say, do this. This is the last thing you should do in Mass Effect. Of all the things you do, once you do everything else and you do the suicide mission, this should be the last thing that you do. Most importantly, is because it sets up the events of Mass Effect 3. Because in the Arrival DLC, you have the Reapers that are coming in, that they're going to use the Batarian the Alpha relay to come through to start their invasion. This is where they're going to begin, and that the idea is that the Alliance, these group of Alliance operatives, want to smash an asteroid into the mass relay so that they can sort of stop the Reapers coming so imminent. Like the Reapers will still come, but it could take them more months, maybe even a year or two, to actually get here just by standard fast and light travel. And that should give us and all the other races enough time to prepare for when they get here. And it does. It gives them a lot of time. Why it's so hard hitting and why is it so difficult is the fact of, one, you're doing it on your own. So you've got no companions. It's just you, Shepard, on their own, right? And then it's the idea that you quickly realize that if I slam this asteroid into this mass relay, the mass relay will go supernova, and it won't only just explode, it will wipe out it will wipe out the whole system. Basically, it will destroy the whole system. It will kill all the Batarians. All the Batarians in this system, it will wipe them out completely, and whatever Batarians survive, if any, will be stranded there. And the Batarians already hate humans as it is, and it's that choice of the fact that if I don't do it, the Reapers will come and we are not ready. But if I do it, hundreds of millions of Batarians will die. And I've said it before. I think I said it on Chatsu's podcast. I feel sorry for the Batarians because, again, they get the bad end of the stick. Always. And then this one, where they lose one of their systems, they lose one of their home planets, they have no real defense at all. They are actually the first people to get hit by the Reapers. You learn that when you play Mass Effect 3. The Batarians were one of the first people to actually take on the Reapers, and they got wiped out. And because of the events of the Arrival DLC, they were far less ready than anybody else. So they are now refugees. They have nowhere to go. There's only not many of them left. And so the people that weren't killed, their bodies were taken and experimented on and end up becoming used as cannon fodder. The Reapers take them, change them, and turn them into, I can't remember what the creatures are called now, but change them into like a warrior, sort of a soldier for the Reaper force. You feel sorry for the Batarians completely, but it's one of them heart hitting sort of ones. But when you finally made that decision, you get to talk to Harbinger for a bit, and he basically calls you like a blight, like you have been a nuisance. You've been getting your thorn under my side, but don't worry, we're coming. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill everybody. I'm going to wipe it all out, and the cycle's going to repeat. And then you have that really badass Commander Shepard moment where you're like, yeah, well, I've seen it all, heard it before. I took down Sovereign. We're ready for you. Come and get it, basically. And what I like with this DLC, if you play this DLC, when you play Mass Effect 3, originally, if you don't play this DLC, when you play Mass Effect 3, the idea is that you will be going to talk to the the Alliance Council on Earth in London, and you are up for sort of helping Cerberus. If you play the Arrival DLC, you are being brought up to court of what you did to the mass relay and what you did to the Batarians, and potentially starting a human Batarian war. Because even though there's a lot of people believe Shepard when he says the Reapers are coming, at this stage nobody really believes him. So the idea, the Alliance is like, you've started a war with a potential war with the Batarians with no proof that the Reapers are coming back. We don't want to go to war with the Batarians. We're going to have to now. And then luckily, sort of not long after, a couple of seconds, if anything happens, the Reapers attack Earth, and then the story sort of begins. But always leave this one last, because it is so impactful and so important. It gets you ready for when you play Mass Effect 3 to just jump straight in to that. And like I said, I always feel bad about doing it, but you have to do it, because yes, a couple 100 million Batarians died and a whole system was wiped out, but it also gave the billions and billions and billions of races, and I mean not races, life that's in the Milky Way galaxy, a chance to prepare and to fight off the Reapers when they do eventually get here, which they will get here. It's just a matter of time. And yeah, it's hard, it's difficult. And this is what I love about Mass Effect. It's just the fact of there's no easy decisions. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes you generally have to pause and to think. And I did when I first played these games. I had to pause it and just think, what should I do? What is going to happen? Now that I've played these games how many times, the choices are still difficult, but I know which one's the good one and which one's the bad one. And I always go for the good one anyway, because I always play Paragon. But it's still one of those things where, even though I know what's good and what's bad, sometimes the good option's the bad option. It just feels like the bad option. It feels like I'm still doing something bad. I'm still a monster. You know, the Batarians, yes, they're the enemy of the humans, but you know what? They don't deserve it, but I have to do it because the Reapers will come and we're not ready. So it's difficult. It really, really is. But my overall sort of coming to a close now, my overall thoughts of this game is that it's absolutely incredible. And building your crew, getting yourself ready for the suicide mission, then going on a suicide mission and realizing that if I haven't done any of the side missions before I go here, most of my crew is going to be dead, and most of the colonists are going to be dead. But if I don't do my loyalty missions, if I don't make sure that everybody, if I just go into it guns blazing, thinking, yeah, let's go for it. If I don't do any of the upgrades to the Normandy, arm upgrades, weapon upgrades, shield upgrades, if I don't do any of that, when I go on the suicide mission, a lot of people are going to die. And I remember when I first did the suicide mission, I lost a few people, and it hurt. And it was difficult, and I couldn't go back on an old save because I had no old save. Like I was stuck. I had to keep going, even though I saw Morden die because I didn't upgrade the shields. So there was an explosion in the engine bay, or I didn't do the shields. So I didn't do the weapons. So Legion dies or something like that, or this character wasn't loyal. So when we go through the collector base, this person ends up getting shot and dying in my arms, and it's difficult, and it's horrible, and it's important to the story of like, look, this is why you don't jump in. This is why you make sure that you're ready. This is why, you know, you don't faff about. It really narrows into your mind of like, look, the Reapers are collecting colonies of humans all the time, constantly. If you sit around wasting time, more people are going to die, and then the quicker the Reapers will get here, you've got to get rid of the collectors as soon as possible. And it puts into that mind of like, okay, I've got to start doing management. I can enjoy myself, and I'm enjoying myself, but I've got to start paying attention. I've got to do everything as soon as possible. Now, me being somebody who's played these games multiple times, I know what to do and what not to do, where to go first, where to go for resources, what to upgrade first, what to spend those resources on first before we spend on anything else. What's the important things? And then before I get to go to the Reaper FTL, then I will finish off the loyalty missions. And it's things like that. Like, it really phones home to your mind of like, look, you're against the clock. You can't mess about. You've got to get everything done in time, and then do the suicide mission. And even now doing the suicide mission, it's terrifying because it's still the idea of like, I know I've done it right. I know that I've done all the loyalty missions, and I've done this multiple times. And I know that if I put the right people on the right crews, or if I put like Tally in the vents or Legion in the vents, they'll be okay. And if I put Garrus on the first side team, and if I put Jacob on the second side team, that people will live and no one will die. Even though I do that, I'm still there biting my nails every time. I'm worried of like, oh God, have I made the wrong decision? Have I not talked to this character enough? Have I not done enough? I'm still sitting there overthinking of like, have I done enough? And it's one of those thing where I love Mass Effect 2, but it really does home to you quickly of like, look, the Reapers are invading you soon. You've got to shut down the collectors. You've got to deal with them as soon as possible, because if the collectors are about when the Reapers are about, things are going to get nasty very quickly and going to get difficult very quickly. And it's all about being prepared. It's all about getting yourself ready, and especially when you get to Mass Effect 3, this mindset that sort of Mass Effect 2 sort of drills into you plays a really crucial big part in Mass Effect 3, because as you go through that game, as you go through the story, there'll be a lot of systems that you can't go to. Well, you can go to them, but if you go to them, you can't do a lot there because Reapers are there, and if you get caught, you die. You know, they will chase you. Reapers will swarm you. So it's one of those of like, get everything you've done while you can, as quickly as you can, so that as the game goes on and things get a lot more difficult and less time, and you can't go to many places because you just get swarmed by Reapers, it's one of those where it's like you've just got to do everything as quickly as possible. You've got to resource manage without, you know, and this is what I love about Mass Effect 2. It just keeps you on your toes constantly. It took everything that Mass Effect 1 was and just did it tenfold. Characters, story, levels, everything being a lot more linear, yes, but everything is scripted, is structured. Everything, all the side missions feel as impactful as the main missions. And especially when you get to the likes of Mass Effect 3, when even the smallest Joe Bloggs bloke that you talk to, you actually find out when you meet him in Mass Effect 3, you're like, oh, thank you for helping me with X, Y, and Z problem. And next thing you know, you've now got some help to your war asset. He ends up becoming a war asset that you can actually use. And it might only be 25 points to 50 points, whatever, but it's still 25 extra points, to the war asset, to sort of the overall score, to make sure that if you'll succeed in your battle against the Reapers or not. And it was the same with Mass Effect 1, where like things you do in Mass Effect 1 will pay off in this one. And I love that. I just love the interconnectivity of it, that this universe ever grows, ever bigger. And by the time you get to Mass Effect 3, you have access to the full universe. But by the time you get access to it, the Reapers are here, so you can't actually go to all of it without being in danger. So it's, I love this game. I do. This one will always be my favorite out of the original 3, just for what it is and what it does. But I'm looking forward to going into Mass Effect 3. As I mentioned, it's not one that I play a lot, mainly because it's heart-wrenching. It's difficult to play without getting emotional. How many times I played it, it still hits me hard every time. So it's not one I play a lot. So I'm looking forward to going into it. I'm looking forward to giving it a play. This one took me longer to complete than I originally thought it would do. There's a lot more to do. And there was a lot of things that had to be do, and there's a lot of dialogue. And obviously, I was listening to the dialogue and didn't want to skip any because I wanted to see if there's any difference between male Shep and female Shep. But yeah, so this one took me a while. Mass Effect 3 might take me a while, but I'm going to take a break now from Mass Effect and where we're going to play something else for a while. But you ain't got to worry about that. The next time you hear about me what have I got next in the Mass Effect pipeline? I've got the Mass Effect movie. They made it. It's a short animated movie. Which I think who is it now? What's his name? Freddie Prinze Jr. does the voice for him. I forgot his name now, but he's a character in Mass Effect 3. Anyway, and I'm going to watch the movie, and then I'm going to do Mass Effect not Revelation. What's the book now? The next Mass Effect book. Anyway, I can't remember off the top of my head. I've been talking in total for an hour and 46 minutes, so I'm a bit tired. And it's getting a bit warm in here in this room. So I do apologise. But yes, there is more Mass Effect for me to come. It'll be a while before I get to Mass Effect 3. It'll probably be the end of the month, end of August. Yeah, so I'm in July now. So June, July. Yeah, so probably the end of August you'll see that. But for now, don't worry, there'll be 2 more Mass Effect things to get through before we get to Mass Effect 3. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the rest of this journey. And yeah, I just can't wait. Cannot wait. So I've got my fingers crossed. I've got my legs crossed. It all goes well and you all enjoy it. I'm going to go off now and rest because I'm absolutely knackered. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's stuck with me, who's been listening for this long. I've almost been talking for 2 hours, so I do apologize. I'm going to wrap this up very, very quickly. 3 things I want you to do for me before we finish today. Number 1, follow me on Twitter at Nerdstalgic_pod. Number 2, if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And number 3, if you listen to this on Spotify on your mobile phone, please leave a star rating between 1 to 5 stars. So now that is done, thank you very, very much for listening. I've been your host, Luke the Human. You've been listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.